My boss looked me straight in the eyes and told me he couldn't pay me the money he promised. $250. Not because I didn't earn it. Not because I failed to do my job. But because, according to him, the store wasn't performing well enough. In that exact moment, something inside me shifted. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel shock. What I felt was that heavy, humiliating realization that the person across from you believes you're trapped. That they believe you need them more than they need you. That you'll accept disrespect because your bills don't give you the luxury of pride. He had absolutely no idea that those words would quietly set off a chain of events that would end his career. Before we go any further, if you've ever been promised something at work and then had that promise taken back once you'd already given your time, your energy, and your loyalty, hit the like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because this story isn't about being petty. It's about what happens when someone learns the hard way that you don't get to exploit people without consequences. At the time, I was working as a manager at a Wendy's. And I need to say this clearly, because people love to dismiss stories like this the moment they hear fast food. I wasn't some careless employee who didn't care. I took that job seriously. I treated it like a responsibility, not a joke. I showed up early. I stayed late. I trained new hires. I handled customer complaints. I fixed mistakes before they reached corporate. I absorbed stress so my crew wouldn't have to. I did everything that was expected of me and more, because that's how I was raised. You work hard. You keep your word. You earn your money. I was averaging around 65 hours a week. Sometimes more. Long opening shifts where the parking lot was still dark when I arrived. Followed by closing shifts, where the neon lights buzzed above my head long after midnight. Days blended together until time felt meaningless. Monday felt like Thursday. Thursday felt like Sunday. My life slowly became a cycle of clocks, alarms, and drive-through headsets. Physically, I was exhausted all the time. My feet ached constantly. My back hurt in ways that sleep never fully fixed. My hands smelled like grease no matter how many times I washed them. Mentally, I was drained. But I kept showing up. Because that's what managers do. You don't complain. You don't fall apart. You push through and make sure the store runs, no matter what it costs you. Days off were rare, and when I finally got one, it didn't feel like rest. It felt like recovery. I'd sleep too long, wake up sore, and spend half the day just trying to feel human again. Even then, my mind never fully shut off. I was always thinking about schedules, coverage, inventory, and whether someone would call out. Still, I stayed. Mostly because my crew felt like family. We were all stuck in the same grind, and we looked out for each other. And my general manager, while far from perfect, at least treated me with a basic level of respect most days. That was enough to keep me there. Then came the call that started everything. It was one of my only scheduled days off. I remember that morning clearly because I felt something close to relief. I didn't have to put on the uniform. I didn't have to hear the headset screaming orders. I didn't have to manage chaos for a few hours. Then my phone rang. They asked me if I could come in, just for one shift. They said they'd give me a $100 bonus. I hesitated. Every part of my body wanted to say no. But $100 matters when you're already giving most of your life to a job that barely acknowledges you. So I agreed. I came in. I worked hard. I handled everything like I always did. Angry customers, staffing gaps, equipment issues. Nothing special. Just another day of holding things together. When I left, I didn't even think about the bonus. I trusted it would come. That trust was my mistake. Before I ever saw that money, they asked me again. Another day off. That's when something inside me finally pushed back. I sat there doing the math in my head. I had worked nearly 23 days straight without a real break. I wasn't angry when I responded. I wasn't demanding. I simply said I'd do it for $150 this time. They agreed instantly. No hesitation. No paperwork. No follow-up. At the time, I took that as respect. In reality, it meant they felt comfortable lying to me. Weeks passed. No bonus. At first, I stayed calm. Payroll can be slow. Corporate approval takes time. That's what I told myself. But every time I asked, I got vague answers. We're checking on it. It should be coming soon. Let me follow up. The kind of answers meant to delay, not resolve. Slowly, patience turned into frustration. Frustration turned into doubt. And doubt turned into that uncomfortable realization that I was being strung along because they thought I'd eventually give up. Eventually. My general manager told me the district manager would be in that night and that I should talk to him directly. That night, I was running dinner rush with a skeleton crew. It was me, my girlfriend, my best friend, and one other coworker who had grown close through shared exhaustion. 4 people running an entire store. The lobby was packed. The drive-through line wrapped around the building. Fryers were screaming. Order screens were stacked. Customers were irritated. Mistakes piled up faster than we could fix them. And still, we kept going. When the district manager finally arrived, I pulled him aside. My shirt was damp with sweat. My hands smelled like fryer oil. I calmly told him I was owed $250. He sighed like the conversation itself annoyed him. Then he told me the store wasn't making enough money. Then he blamed my shift. Said our drive-through times were too high. When I explained that we were running full volume with half the staff, he shrugged and said that wasn't an excuse. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. He told me they couldn't give me the bonus until revenue improved and drive times went down. Not that they wouldn't. That they couldn't. As if promises only mattered when they were convenient. As if my time and sacrifice were negotiable. In that moment, I stopped arguing. Something inside me went completely still. Because where I come from, there's one rule that doesn't need explaining. You don't mess with someone's money. And once that line is crossed, everything after it is on you. That conversation with the district manager didn't end in an argument. That's the part people don't expect. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten him. I didn't say anything dramatic. I nodded, said okay, and went back to work. But inside, something had already snapped. Not loudly. Not explosively. It was quieter than that. It was the kind of break that happens when you realize the rules you've been playing by were never real to begin with. I finished that shift on autopilot. I smiled at customers. I fixed orders. I helped my crew keep things moving. But I wasn't really there anymore. Every sound felt distant. The beeping fryers, the headset chatter. Even the angry customers blurred together. My mind kept replaying his words over and over. We can't give you the bonus. Not we won't. We can't. Like it was out of his hands. Like promises disappear the moment they become inconvenient. When I finally got home that night, I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling. Running the conversation back again and again. Thinking of everything I could have said. Everything I should have said. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a delay. This was a test. They wanted to see if I'd accept it. If I'd keep working the same hours, with the same effort. After being shown exactly how little my word meant to them. I grew up in a place where respect matters. Where your word matters. Where money isn't just money, it's survival. You don't promise someone something and then pretend it never happened. And you definitely don't do that to someone who's already giving you everything they have. By the time the sun came up, my anger had settled into something sharper. Something focused. The next day, I went into work like nothing had changed. But I started paying attention in a way I hadn't before. I noticed how often management leaned on the same few people. How schedules magically worked out so certain. Employees were always stretched thin while others got away with doing the bare minimum. I noticed how often my crew looked exhausted, frustrated, and unappreciated. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't the only one being taken advantage of. I was just the one who finally got lied to out loud. That night, after the rush slowed down, I asked my crew to meet me in the office. No yelling. No speeches. Just honesty. I told them exactly what happened. I told them about the bonuses that were promised. I told them how I worked on my days off. I told them what the district manager said when I asked to be paid. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't twist the story. I just told the truth. The reaction was immediate. Not shock, recognition. The kind that comes when people hear something that confirms what they've already felt. My girlfriend was the first to speak. She said, "So they really think you'll just let this go?" My best friend shook his head and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insulting. The other coworker just sat there quietly for a moment before saying, "They do this to everyone. They just finally did it to the wrong person." That's when I asked the question that mattered. I told them I wasn't going to keep working like nothing happened. I told them I wasn't going to let someone tell me my time didn't matter. And I told them that if I walked, I wouldn't blame anyone for staying. This wasn't a demand. It was a choice. I didn't even finish the sentence before my best friend said, "If you walk, I walk." My girlfriend nodded immediately. The other coworker followed without hesitation. There was no dramatic build-up. No long debate. Just quiet certainty. That was the moment I realized something powerful. They didn't stay because of the job. They stayed because of each other. And they were just as tired of being disrespected as I was. That night, I decided to give the district manager one last chance. Not because he deserved it, but because I wanted to know for sure. I wanted it to be clear, even in my own mind, that I wasn't overreacting. So the next day, I called him. The phone rang. Then it stopped. He declined the call. I called again. Same thing. Again. Straight to voicemail. That's when it hit me. He wasn't busy. He wasn't unavailable. He was avoiding me. He had already decided I wasn't worth responding to. That realization burned more than anything he'd said the night before. Because ignoring someone who's asking for their earned money isn't just disrespect. It's deliberate. I left him a voicemail. My voice was calm, but firm. I told him he needed to call me back. I gave him a deadline. I told him that if he didn't respond by 8:45, the entire night crew would be gone. No threats. No insults. Just a statement of fact. At that point, it was around 7:30. Plenty of time to do the right thing. After that, I went into the office and sat down. And that's when something unexpected happened. My general manager had left her email logged in. Normally, I wouldn't have touched it. But I had a feeling. I knew if he was going to do anything, he wouldn't call me. He'd email her instead. So I waited. For about 20 minutes, nothing happened. I stared at the screen, listening to the sounds of the store outside the office. The fryer timers. The muffled voices. The routine continuing like nothing was about to change. And then an email popped up. The subject line read, "Emergency, Lonnie." My name. That's when I knew everything I needed to know. The moment I saw my name in that subject line, my chest tightened. Emergency, Lonnie. Not because something was wrong with me, but because something was wrong for them. That's when it became painfully clear that I was never part of the conversation. I was never someone they planned to deal with directly. I was a problem they wanted handled quietly. Behind my back, like I didn't exist at all. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before opening it. A part of me already knew what I was going to read. But another part still hoped I was wrong. Maybe he was finally trying to fix it. Maybe this was him scrambling to make things right before it blew up. That hope lasted about half a second. The email wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. Every sentence confirmed exactly what I feared. Jacob wasn't asking my general manager how to pay me. He wasn't asking how to resolve the situation. He wasn't even pretending to care. He was making sure she was ready to come in and cover the store. Ready to handle the fallout. Ready to keep things running after I was dealt with. That was the moment everything snapped into focus. He had already decided. He wasn't going to call me back. He wasn't going to explain himself. And he definitely wasn't going to pay me. In his mind, I was already replaceable. Already written off. All of this over $250 he had personally promised. I felt something hot rise in my chest, but I forced myself to stay still. This wasn't blind anger anymore. This was clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was responding to facts. And the fact was simple: if I stayed, I was telling them they could do this again. Not just to me, but to anyone under me. I leaned back in the chair and listened to the sounds of the store outside the office. Fryers popping. Headsets buzzing. Orders being called out. My crew working hard. Completely unaware that management had already decided to throw me away like I didn't matter. That's what hurt the most. Not the money. Not even the disrespect. It was knowing how much we gave to that place, and how easily we were dismissed. I checked the time. Still no call. No missed call. No message. Nothing. Just silence. The kind of silence that's louder than any argument. That was my final answer. I stood up and walked out of the office. My crew looked up immediately. They could tell something had changed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just told them the truth. I told them he wasn't calling back. I told them he had emailed management instead of answering me. I told them this was it. There was no hesitation. No fear. Just quiet understanding. Everyone nodded. Everyone knew exactly what this meant. These were people who had given everything to that store, just like I had. People who had skipped breaks, stayed late, and swallowed disrespect because they needed the job. But there's a difference between needing a job and accepting abuse. We didn't rush. That's the part people imagine wrong. There was no panic. No chaos. We moved deliberately. Calmly. Almost ceremonially. We shut off what needed to be shut off. Or rather, we didn't. We left things exactly as they were. Meet out. Toppings uncovered. Fryers still hot. Orders unfinished. We walked away from the systems that had drained us dry. As I took off my headset, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not relieved. Not happy. Just free. For the first time in a long time. I wasn't carrying the weight of a place that never cared about me. I walked out with my people beside me, knowing full well what kind of mess we were leaving behind. And knowing that for once, the consequences weren't mine to carry. Outside, the air felt different. Cooler. Quieter. Like stepping out of a storm you didn't realize you were standing in. I checked my phone one last time. Still nothing. No call. No apology. No attempt to stop what was already happening. Jacob had made his choice. At that moment, I understood something important. Revenge doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it's just you finally standing up and letting someone experience the consequences of their own arrogance. And whether he realized it yet or not, everything he'd worked for was about to collapse, not because of anger, but because of his own decisions. The next day, I didn't rush in. I didn't need to. The storm had already started, whether Jacob knew it or not. I walked in deliberately, calm, collected, carrying nothing but the weight of truth and quiet confidence. My crew was already there, waiting. No frantic planning, no whispered fears, just knowing. We all knew what we were about to do. And we all understood the unspoken rule: we had been crossed. And nothing would fix it except our own action. I turned in my keys. Not with malice, not with gloating. Not with the kind of childish satisfaction some might expect from a revenge story. I simply handed them over. The gesture itself was quiet, almost mundane. But it carried the weight of months of frustration, exhaustion, and silent indignation. That small set of keys represented hours of work that had been ignored, promises that had been broken, and respect that had been denied. And in that moment, it symbolized closure. I walked out of that store for the last time, feeling a strange mix of freedom and gravity. Freedom because I was finally detached from a system that didn't value me. And gravity because I knew what would happen next. The consequences for Jacob weren't immediate, but they were inevitable. And unlike most revenge fantasies, this one didn't require plotting or scheming. It was the natural result of his own arrogance and incompetence. A week later, the confirmation came in a way that almost felt surreal. My brother, who worked at the same store, called me. I could tell from the tone of his voice that something had happened. "What's up?" I asked casually, though inside I already suspected. And then he said it: Jacob lost all his stores. He has to go back to Indiana. That moment hit me harder than I expected. Not because I felt joy at his misfortune, but because the dominoes I knew would fall had finally fallen. Every single bad decision he had made. Every time he underestimated people he had power over. Every lie and avoidance, it all came crashing down. I sat there on the phone, processing the reality. Jacob's pay had been tied to the success of his stores. Losing those stores meant losing income, status, and influence. From a comfortable $65,000 a year to $40,000. All because of $250 he refused to pay me. It was almost poetic. Not petty. Not dramatic. Just pure consequence. And it was all earned, not through any trickery or illegal maneuver, but through the undeniable weight of truth. He treated people poorly, and the universe responded accordingly. I remember thinking back to the store. The fryers, the unfinished orders. The chaos we left behind. That wasn't revenge in a traditional sense. It wasn't about teaching him a lesson he'd instantly feel. It was about acting in alignment with the values I had lived by my entire life: respect, integrity, and fairness. By walking out, we simply allowed the natural fallout to reach the person who deserved it most. And in the quiet moments afterward, there was satisfaction, a satisfaction that doesn't come from anger, but from knowing that justice had been served without compromising who I was. Looking back now, I realize that the most satisfying part wasn't the financial consequences he faced. It wasn't the fear or stress that surely washed over him when he realized he had no stores left to manage. It was the validation of my own choices, the knowledge that I refused to bend or break under unfair treatment. That's the real victory. That's the feeling you carry with you long after the immediate chaos fades. The crew? They felt it too. For them, it wasn't about money either. It was about being seen, being acknowledged, being treated with the basic human decency that had been so cruelly withheld. And in that collective recognition, a sense of unity and power emerged. We didn't need to scream. We didn't need to protest. Our quiet action spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. And Jacob, he had a choice, too, one last chance to salvage something. But he had already made his decision. By avoiding, by ignoring, by believing that we would continue to serve him despite disrespect and lies, he had signed his own fate. It's funny how life works sometimes. The smallest things, $250, a few ignored calls, can set off a chain reaction that ends in complete transformation. And sometimes, it's not just the money. It's the principle, the truth, the refusal to accept injustice. Sitting back and thinking about everything that happened, I realized the most powerful part of all of it wasn't the money. It wasn't Jacob losing his stores or his pay being slashed. It wasn't even seeing the shock on his face when reality hit him, though that was satisfying in its own quiet way. The most powerful part was the affirmation that standing up for yourself, refusing to be taken advantage of, and holding people accountable doesn't make you selfish. It makes you human. It validates everything you've worked for. Every hour, every sacrifice, every moment you stayed late and covered for someone else. It proves that your time, your effort, and your integrity have value, whether the world recognizes it or not. I've replayed those final days in my mind countless times. I think about walking out of that store, the keys in my hand, and the silence that followed. I remember looking at my crew, seeing the mix of relief and empowerment in their faces. It wasn't joy over someone else's failure. It was the quiet satisfaction of justice. Served justice. That didn't require anger, violence, or malice. We didn't need to sabotage anything. We didn't need to threaten. We simply acted in alignment with truth. And the universe, in its own way, took care of the rest. Karma has a strange way of working. Sometimes it's loud. Sometimes it's subtle. And sometimes it doesn't need you to lift a finger. You just have to refuse to play along with injustice. That's what we did. We refused. And Jacob, whether he realized it at the time or not, paid the price for every small disrespect, every broken promise, every attempt to manipulate and avoid accountability. It wasn't revenge in the typical sense. It was simply the natural consequences of his own choices. And the best part, it felt completely earned. Looking back, there's a lesson here that applies far beyond fast food restaurants, skeleton crews, or bonus checks. There's a universal truth about respect, integrity, and human dignity. When someone treats you unfairly, when they lie, when they manipulate, the first step isn't to strike back in anger. The first step is to recognize your own value. To make the choices that align with your principles. To act deliberately, calmly, and with clarity. And if the person who wronged you doesn't change, that's not your responsibility. The consequences will find them, as surely as they found Jacob. Even now, I think about how easy it could have been to give up. To accept his excuses, to swallow my pride. To keep working the same shifts. Under the same stress, with the same broken promises. But the choice not to give up, that's what shaped the outcome. That's what turned a story of frustration and exploitation into a story of empowerment, justice, and self-respect. And that, in the end, is more satisfying than any paycheck could ever be. So if you're watching this and feeling trapped, underappreciated, or taken advantage of, remember this. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't make you the bad guy. It makes you someone who values their time, their energy, and their worth. And sometimes, that alone is enough to set the universe in motion. If this story gave you chills, if it made your blood boil, or even just made you think about a time someone underestimated you, hit that like button. Comment below with your most satisfying revenge story. Or even just a moment when you refused to be treated unfairly. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Stories that remind us all that justice may be quiet. It may be deliberate, but it's always powerful when it's deserved. Because in the end, respect isn't given. It's earned, by us, for us. And if someone tries to take it from you, sometimes all you have to do is stand up. Walk away, and let the consequences find them.